Good afternoon. Well, good afternoon if you're in the UK. Good morning, good evening if you're from somewhere else. Welcome to this event, which is sharing the results of an 18-month research network led by University of the Arts London and Manchester University. About design and policy. I'm going to share with you the agenda and then just invite you again, if you'd like to put your names and details in the chat. It's great to see some familiar faces and names and see some new ones as well. So my name's Lucy Kimbell. I am Professor of Contemporary Design Practices at Central St Martin's at University of the Arts London. In a short while, I'm going to hand over to Professor Liz Richardson from the Department of Politics at University of Manchester, who will give a summary of our network findings and the report that this event is launching. We then have three invited responses. First, Coca Rivas, who's Director of Design at DXW, one of the medium-sized consultancies integrating design and digital, working closely with public sector clients and government. Then we have a response from Dr. Jonathan Carr-West. Jonathan is the Chief Executive of the Local Government Information Unit and will share perspectives from the very challenging world of local government in the UK. And then our third response is from Design Research, Lady Rachel Cooper, Professor and indeed founder of Lancaster Imagination at Lancaster University, who will give us a perspective from Design Research. And then we'll open it up to discussion. So each of those will speak for about 5 minutes. I'll then invite them to make responses to each other, and then we'll open up for a discussion. And because we have quite a lot of people on the call, we will ask you to put your question or comment in the chat if you'd like to, or raise your hand, and myself and my colleague Louise will do our best to spot those and make sure that we have to get a chance. And we will end promptly by 3 o'clock, and I'll just say a few words about what's happening with the network. So I will press the buttons on the slide and hand over to Liz.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Liz Richardson from the University of Manchester and involved with the network in writing the report. So the network was, we ran it over 18 months. We had 4 events with 12 amazing speakers. Each time we tried to get someone from a design perspective, from a political science or public policy perspective, and someone from practice to add their thoughts and contributions. We had over 250 people come and take part in the events over that time, and the network now has nearly 800 members on LinkedIn. We were funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council for around, I can't remember, £30,000, something of that order. And we had amazing help from an advisory board and a steering group. Now, at the end of all of that activity and effort and people's time and ideas, what came out of the other end? So what we did in the network, we didn't do any primary research. What we were doing was having conversations with multiple people, thinking about what a future research agenda might look like. And that's the conversation we wanted to have with people as a pre-stage to thinking about what the future of design research and research that connects public policy scholarship and design research scholarship, what might that look like in the future? We wanted to hear from people what their burning issues were, what their unanswered questions were, what challenges they were facing, and where more research in the future could really help say some useful things for both academics and people in policy and people in practice. What we concluded on the next slide, in summary, was that, well, I mean, it's a bit of an old trope, isn't it? Academics call for more research, but we really did hear from across all of those people, across all of those events, and across the year and a half, that there was a very strong and powerful potential research agenda that could be developed further, that would enhance our knowledge base around this area. And this is the summary of our main recommendations. That we could, the field could do with more research that deepens our understanding of the range of possible relations between design and policy, clarifying the extent, types, distinctiveness and impact of design in relation to public policy making. Now that is a very excellent, quite rich summary of the whole report, really. And I'm going to say a little bit more about how we got to each of those questions in the next few minutes. We also made recommendations based on our network about how we felt that research agenda could be delivered in the future, because from what we saw, that there was incredible existing work already taking place in policy teams and policy labs, and there was already a lot of collaborative research happening. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading that I'm in legal jeopardy. Oh, thank God, no, I'm not. So we could see that there was this huge potential to do research in a way that brought together the best of practice and academic research and research in other fields, if, for example, research done by consultancies, think tanks and others, to do that on site with partners in the field and really have that practice-led, practice-informed, academic evidence base with lots of credibility coming through. The other key thing was about cross-disciplinary research within academic disciplines. So I've just talked about transdisciplinary research, linking people in policy practice with researchers in academia and outside academia, but also crossing disciplines. So the network itself was already a collaboration between people from different disciplines. My home is in political science, Lucy's home is in design research, and the other authors, Catherine and Ramya, who are on the calls, similarly from different disciplines, and it was incredibly productive and fruitful to have those conversations across our traditional disciplinary silos. So I'm going to just explain a little bit more how we got to the summary recommendation at the top there, that we advocating a research agenda that clarifies the extent, types, distinctiveness and impact of design in relation to policy making. So the first thing is about extent. We heard about lots of incredible work going on, central government, local government, other organisations, in, with, by, communities. And the fact is, we know something about the extent of activity going on, but not enough. We could definitely stand to know more about how much, what's the overall volume of activity, where is it, who's doing it, what purposes are they doing it for, and how is it organised, the role of design in relation to public policy making. So this is quite basic, but crucial information, and we don't have good enough information on that at the moment, and it would be really beneficial for the field to really just understand and be able to map out what's going on in a bit more depth. I know there's been attempts to do this along the way, but more work definitely would really help. The second thing that it's not second on that list, I don't think, but impacts is what I'm going to talk about next, that we recommended there should be more research on the impact of design in relation to policy making. We heard in the network from proponents of the benefits of design that they'd seen and experienced amazing results. We heard from beneficiaries of people who'd had designers working with them. They also felt it had really benefited their ability to make effective policy and enhance their policy outcomes. These are great signs that there's something good going on here. However, too often we are relying on case studies, love case studies, but in and of themselves, they aren't the sort of robust, convincing evidence base that would convince, say, a Treasury official to really go for this kind of investment. We need a better evidence base about impact. I mean, it's a classic question for any field, like, how do you know you're making a difference? And the tradition in design research so far has not been, for example, that of other fields where they've used experimental evidence to produce that kind of evidence. That's not the only route that you would take to investigate impact, but more work on clarifying the impact of public design in relation to policymaking and the public value of policymaking is definitely needed. That's a really important thing for the field at this point in its development. The third thing I wanted to mention was we talked about understanding the different types of relationships between design and policy making. And we also talk about the distinctiveness. So I'm going to explain how we got to types first, which is that we had amazing conversations in the network, lots of debates that we didn't necessarily always resolve or agree on about different ways that design was being used in relation to policy. So some of the uses were classic, what a consultancy described to me as they say we do two things. We do fix and we do build. Fix is get the existing thing that happens and just make it work better. Build is let's reimagine the whole thing. And this was essentially, crudely speaking, the sort of shape of the debates we had across the time. So is design a way to improve what's already there, or is it a way to really reimagine the world into an entirely new shape? Or is it a mix of those things at different points in the policy cycle for different policy topics, etc.? And this is an amazing debate that we were having. One in the report, we quote one of the contributors to one of the events we talked about design as one of the relationships is that design unsettles what we think about existing policy. And he said, as a policymaker, I'm unsettled by the word unsettling. But he himself was trying to do work that unsettled their knowledge of how things happened. And they were very much engaged in unlearning. So this was a really interesting debate about these different types of relationships and what's appropriate and what is feasible within the policy space. And we definitely felt that that was a rich seam of potential future research that could be mined further. And then we talk about the deepening understanding of design's distinctiveness. I would say, I mean, my co-authors might have a different take on this, but I think really for me where that came from is that it was partly a response to people from outside of existing advocates for design in policy, asking questions like, well, what is it anyway? Obviously for a designer, that's a very, very basic question, but for people who are in that periphery, who aren't yet proponents or advocates, who are curious and interested, but a little bit maybe wary or just unfamiliar, they're asking two questions. What is design in relation to policy making? And what's special about it? Is it different or better even than some of the other tools, frameworks, approaches that other people have advocated to me? You know, for example, isn't it just citizen participation dressed up a little bit? Or surely we do this already, it's just arts-based methods with a new name. These kinds of debates, I think the answers to those questions are design is distinctive. It has got some particular qualities and characteristics that make it different and in some cases more productive as an approach for policy making. However, in order to really make that argument and make it in a convincing way to people who aren't currently convinced, we've advocated for a research agenda that looks at better conceptual and definitional work. I mean, I say better, more developed, more evolved, different angles on conceptual and definitional work that builds on the work that's already been done in the field, but that helps get new people on board and really has that mobilizing effect. So overall, we want to advocate for a research agenda that builds on what's already gone before, but that really now starts to help build the credibility of design in relation to policy and the momentum that we have in the field to really take this forward and expand it. As I said, the network also helped us understand how we could produce this research in a cross-disciplinary and transdisciplinary way. I'm not going to cover the specific recommendations that we made to specific groups of stakeholders. That's in the report. But we've made recommendations, as Lucy's showing here, for specific kinds of actors in both central and local government in the research world, and also for design consultancies, which people can look at. But essentially, we are advocating for an investment in the field to really build credibility and momentum. I'd just like to thank in advance our respondents and other speakers, and really interested to see what your reactions to this report are. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. So I'm now going to turn to our three invited respondents. First, a perspective from design digital consultancy. I know Coca's worked in central government as well as now in consultancy, and we welcome your responses.
Thanks, Lucy, for inviting us to respond, and thank you for the introductions. So yes, I am Coca Rivas, the design director for DXW, and DXW, as Lucy said at the beginning, is a employee-owned digital agency. We work with the public sector and third sector, and normally in partnership with our clients to make life better for people who use public services and teams that run them. So this report and the recommendations are really interesting and very relevant to our work. As designers in government, this subject is very close to our hearts. And it really raised lots of thoughts and ideas, but I'm going to focus on three things in particular. So first, our focus at DXW is in creating public services. So our best work is done where policy staff are directly involved in design and delivery of the services. However, it's too often we come across in government bodies that we work with, we see a significant gap between policy making and the practicalities of creating and operating a service. In our experience, adding some design practice expertise that does not help close the gap has limited benefits, and then totally fully support Dr. Jocelyn Bailey's point on the report about designing and design and policy practices that have little connection to accountability for the creation and operation of the services, basically. So one focus for research and practice in design and policy should be around closing that gap and creating stronger connections and accountability, and policy making that really understand how services are created and operated, as well as policies that can be more easily turned into good services that achieve the intended outcome. The second point is around that the report mentioned is both policy and design have problematic histories, especially around the relationship between power and participation, and where and how they are done, and who is and who isn't involved. These problems are worse sometimes by the hierarchical nature of many public bodies and the different prestige and proximity to power between policy and design staff, and operational staff, and as well members of the public. So we fully support the point made in the report by Dr. Cara Broadley and Pasha Trotman and others on inclusion and participation. And finally, a frequent problem that we come across again and again is while working with our clients is how government achieve significant change, particularly in complex and highly contested areas. Far too often, this is attempted through long periods of upfront consultation and policy making, followed by multi-year programs that aim to bring in big transformation. So another focus for research and practice can be on how we might take a more incremental approach to policy implementation and associate service design and development. So where we break a larger scale transformation down into more achievable steps based on outcomes, where we can complete some of those steps and realize some of the outcomes relatively quickly, and where we learn from what we have achieved and can inform what we can do in the future. So by doing that, we can reduce the risk, hopefully create better services, and where those smaller steps also might help with the creation of a space which is more inclusive and generate more participatory practices. So we really understand, the big political difficulties, but can this be an answer for government bodies under pressure to produce results within a short political time frame. And thank you. That's
Thank you, Coca. And I think your responses really highlighted the expertise in design teams, whether they're inside government or in your case in a consultancy, working very closely with government, tuned into these realities about integration or the gaps between policy and delivery and issues of power and inclusion. And I think we'll get a different perspective on those now from our next speaker, Jonathan Carr-West, who is Chief Executive of the Local Government Information Unit that works with local authorities across the UK, who will share some perspectives from that kind of front line about the possibilities of design in relation to policy. Jonathan.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a fascinating conversation, so I'm really pleased to take part in it. So I run an organisation called LGIU, Local Government Information Unit. We work with about 300 councils in the UK, in Ireland and Australia, trying to support them to innovate and to respond to challenging times. And I guess that's where I wanted to start with this, which is just to say that local government in the UK, and especially in England, is in really big trouble right now. So you'll have seen, many of you will have seen in the news, very sort of high profile financial failure in local government in Woking, where they have a £2 billion deficit, in Birmingham, where they have a £1 billion equal pay claim. And just to be clear, in both those instances, that was billion with a B for Bertie, not million, £billion. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our research shows that pretty much every council in the country is under severe financial distress. Only 14% of councils are confident in the sustainability of their finances. There's about a list of about 20 councils who are anxious that they are going to go bust. They're going to be unable to balance their books within the next 2 years. So it's a really precarious situation. That's driven by a lot of things, but one of the things that drives it is rapidly increasing demand and rapidly increasing cost in the core statutory services that local government has to provide. So that's adult social care and children's services and housing. So children's services, particularly special educational needs and home to school transport, costs rocketing. For most big local authorities, 2/3 of their money is going on those areas, on social care, adults and children. Okay, so it's worth bearing that in mind. I think what that means in relation to this discussion is that people in leadership positions in local authority have very limited resource and very limited headspace, and they're constantly fighting fires, and they're constantly having to find another 10 million, another 5 million that they have to take out of their budgets. So the insights that design can bring to public service delivery, public service design, have never been more important, but they've also never been harder to absorb institutionally and across the organization, because people are just so stretched that it's very difficult to find the space to really think about how you would use design to start bringing down. And in a way, it has to be about bringing down cost and demand in those core service areas, because the reality is that everything else is actually pretty peripheral at the moment. It's those big adult and social care drivers that are what people care about. So look, this I think really underlines the need that this report identifies for a sort of clearer framework, a clearer theoretical basis to understand how design can feed into policymaking, as Liz said, to the range of possible relations between design and policy. We really need to know that, because there's loads going on right now. There's lots of great practice, people using design techniques to shape public services. There's also, if I'm frank, I think some not so great practice. And I think if you're in a leadership position in local government, it can be quite hard to tell the difference. And it can be quite hard to say, where should we be doing more of this? Where should we be doing less of this? Where do we really need to be taking some of that precious limited resource and investing it in design application? Because we don't have that sort of theoretical framework, that typology of relationships between design and policymaking that allow that sort of decision making at the top level. So I would absolutely endorse the call in this report that we need to do more research on that. And I hope that that will enable people in local government who are making decisions under huge pressure all the time to really think more carefully and have a clearer kind of framework for how they can invite people like all of you who are doing this amazing design work into the sort of policy process so that we can start to see the sort of improvements that we so desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And that was a necessary reminder of those challenges facing leaders in local government, which, as I understand it, even though we obviously will be having a general election next year, most likely, what I understand, I'm not in any special position, but what I gather is that there won't necessarily be significant spend. So actually those challenges will continue potentially for another year or two, and then raise quite a lot of risks for any leader who is trying to invest in design. And if so, which kind of design, as Liz outlined? Is it fix or build, or the envisioning, which design can sometimes do? So we now invite our third speaker, Rachel Cooper, professor at Lancaster University and one of the leading figures in design research in the UK and indeed internationally, who will share some longer term perspectives around design research. Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy, and congratulations, Lucy, Liz, Catherine and Rainey, on a production of a really interesting, critical review of the issue. Now, as Lucy says, I've been around a long time. I've done at least 30 years in design research, and I've been advocating design research in design management and policy at least since 1990. And I saw the development of the field of service design. Before 1990, it really didn't exist. And it emerged from the understanding that we're in a service industry, that service marketing was very important, that designers were now not only designing products, they were designing the whole product service system. And there were collaboration between service marketing and service design. And we developed, or I didn't develop, but I saw the development of what is now a well-established field with undergraduate degrees, master's degrees in service design. And I think design for policy, in policy, design in the policy field is on that similar journey. We're probably, we're not babies, we're sort of crawling about and finding places to stand up, but that's where we are. In fact, in 2012, I saw this emerging and asked Christian Bassan to write a book in my series called Design for Policy, which started to explore this field. And it's great to see how this research, network and report has illustrated that the UK particularly has been spearheading some of this research and developing design in the policy field. However, as it also says, it's critical to understand the distinctiveness of design that design brings. The innovation and impact, we need to understand more. The whole efficiencies and where the efficiencies are. As we've said, local government is challenged. So in order to embrace design, where are the efficiencies and where are the benefits? And again, as Jonathan says, that local government is less mature or has less resources than central government. And the knowledge to employ and deploy design effectively will be a challenge, but also a benefit. Now, I'll give you some examples. I'm going to give you 3 examples of the work we've been doing at Lancaster. I, first of all, was on something called the Lancaster Independent Review, which looked at all the strategy across the whole of Lancashire, in health, in child services, in housing, in employment, and where Lancashire was to go as a county. And a consultancy called Metro Dynamics did an enormous amount of data collection, statistics, and on health and etc. However, the councils in that district had less resources to make any change to policy or implement it. They needed the equivalent of a policy lab with designers working with policymakers to build on that data, to evaluate it, to take more use of it more quickly. Another example is Imagination Lancaster. We did a life survey for 2 councils, Blackburn with Darwin and Lancaster County Council, where we collected data from over 3,000 residents to look at all attitudes and employment and health, etc. We worked with the Connected Places Catapult to develop a dashboard with this data. Again, we're still slow to actually use that data. So we formed an observatory, a joint observatory between the university and the city council to try and work more rapidly and use the research there and use design. And finally, my colleagues on the call, so I'll mention it, Naomi Jacobs, she's been leading something called Taking IoT for a Walk, which is all about the adoption of technology in the city. And that helps the council develop a policy on the adoption of IoT and technology in the city. What I wanted to take a point from that is you need to have a deep understanding and a relationship with that that sector, not just general policy, but you know, a designer doesn't just design, any product designer doesn't just design cars or whatever. They have to understand a specific area. And I think, as the report recommends, you know, design has a strength, but we really need to understand the role of design within the policy environment. The 3 dimensions mentioned in the report, the tool for policy making, improvisation within policy making, and regeneration of policy making, is an excellent sort of start to that. You know, one of the things I always say is the role of design is to make the intangible tangible, and we have a lot of tools to do that. But we don't need to just understand the role of design generally. We need to understand the role of design, not just in co-creation and co-production and the interesting tools and techniques to identify the direction of the policy making. We need to look at the whole life cycle of design, implementation, use, and management and maintenance through the life cycle. So, finally, what I'd say is this report offers a great baseline. We need more research on understanding the knowledge, skills, and requirements for specific parts of the sector. And so we need to understand the role of design in policy in specific fields, in health, in transport, in education, in children's services, and housing. It's not just now design and policy, it's design and policy in. And thank you very much. I'd look to see the next level of research going on. It'd be great.
Thank you, Rachel. So that concludes our 3 invited speakers, but I'd just like to offer you, first of all, before we open it up, an opportunity to reflect or respond to each other's comments, if you'd like to. So Coca, Jonathan, Rachel, if you'd just like to respond to each other's presentations or make any observations. If not, we will move on. Right, so I have to now go back to the chat and look for questions. And maybe we'll start, actually, if anybody would put up their hand, do it visually or using the little thingy on Zoom while I catch up with the chat.
Lucy, on the
yep.
chat, there's someone said that they would be really interested in Jonathan's perspective on if there's any good practice. Hold on. Oh, here we are. Understanding what good practice looks like in relevant other fields. For example, in architecture, is it where you get accreditation, or is it through sort of ISO standards, or what kind of things would his sector like to see in order to be able to distinguish the snake oil from the great?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm going to come at it quite obliquely by picking up some of there's another sort of conversation on the chat which is about sort of, you know, if we're talking in terms of service design and efficiency, and how do we are we precluding sort of radical transformative power, etc. And I think this is really difficult, and I think my suspicion is that if you go down, that becomes a more acute problem if you go down a sort of accreditation or ISO route, because you're sort of then having to define what good looks like in quite narrow institutional terms, which don't allow that sort of radicalism. So I think it is about evaluated outcomes in the end, and it's about, you made the point, Liz, about sort of momentum and where people can see that things have delivered, but also that they have changed and started to change the terms of debate. Having said all that, I think this question about sort of radicalism versus pragmatism in a way is really, that's the challenge. So if I'm the chief executive of a local government, local authority, and you rock up and say we need a policy lab to sort of radically redefine how we think of it, well, I can't do that. I just don't have the money. That's, I would love to do it, but I can't. And every pound I spend and every hour of staff time is a pound and an hour that I'm not putting in somewhere else. So there are, I don't have an easy answer to that, but that's the sort of what we have to try and unlock, because in the end, if we are to, I talked a bit about the cost of social care. If we just think about an aging population, we're forecast to have whatever it is, about 1 million people over 100 by 2070. You're not going to manage that by being more efficient. You need somewhere in the system, somewhere you need radical transformation, but the space in which to do that doesn't currently exist within our institutions of government. So I think I would frame it more as there's a, if we're knocking on the door of local government saying, let us in and let us transform things, I'm not sure that's the way forward, because there isn't that space. So we need to find it in other places, perhaps, and then bring it back in.
And I would agree. And I think this is where the growing up, the maturity of the field needs to take place in the research arena. If we can do collaborative research, which is funded outside the public, outside the public sector, if we can do joint research, which we can get funded with our local government, local councils, which we've done. We paid for, 300,000 for a survey and a work with this comes from research. We need that development space where we can start with evaluation at the beginning of the research. So it's not just that we do the research and then we evaluate. We need to put a plan of evaluation at the beginning of the research and co-create that research with local government so that they get some benefit from it and that we get some benefit from it, and the whole landscape learns from it.
Yeah, exactly that. And then I think you need peak bodies engaged, the LGA, COSLA, others, because they're, the challenge with innovation in local government is always that it sort of local government's great strength is that it's local, but the challenge is that innovation, we talk a lot about connected localism. How do you get that connection rolling out so that you get scale and sort of system-wide change? But yeah, absolutely. I think I agree.
I just wanted to echo those points and say that in some ways it was the network itself was a sort of mini model to exemplify the amazing outcomes that you can get in terms of defining and designing a research agenda when you do it in collaboration with your potential research partners from the outset. And I really hope that kind of message comes through. Lucy, I just wanted to flag there's some other really exciting things going on in the chat, too many exciting things. One was just, I wanted to point to someone mentioning about basically we're starting a bit too late. We're at the point where we're in higher education and things have already gone wrong in terms of design education, and to start design education earlier. We'd had another chat on the report with a different group of people earlier this week, and that point was also made about designing school level curriculums in design skills, so that I think that point was being echoed in other forums, just to flag that across my eye. But there's some very exciting things coming up about complexity that we could invite people to speak to themselves, I think.
Yeah, I was going to pick up related to that complexity point, the point that Lynn is making in the chat about the dominant rational choice market response. So Jonathan's outlined the absolute financial pressures limiting any capacity or in local government. Central government is a bit different because of its scale and the way it works, although there's arguably not that much money depending who you talk to there. So I suppose what we were trying to do in the report is say design can play various roles, and one of those is about envisioning, challenging, and so on. So, Lynn, I'm sort of answering your point, but maybe I could invite Coca, because you're at the coalface, right? So you get employed to design services, digital services, you with the delivery part. You've already told us that having policymakers closely involved in that helps close that gap, because there's always nuance and complexity there. Do you get to challenge some of the policies that are already sort of there, and the mindsets and the rationality by your civil service departmental clients?
I mean, we tend to like research itself, research and design help us to challenge that. It's quite hard from an agency to challenge directly the policy, but often the work that we do is basically directly challenging some of the preconceptions. And when we do research, and I mean, I think you both were talking about having very large research. We find often that doing smaller research pilots that helps identify some of those problems, which potentially they could unlock sort of potential for doing something bigger. But yes, we tend to influence policy, sometimes policy, the policy itself, and sometimes some of the policy implementation and how that might affect the users. So, and I suppose I could go into examples like things such as like wet signatures, where sometimes are embedded as part of a bigger sort of policy change, and other things less functional, which is more around the quality of the qualitative aspect of the policy.
I can see Rashid has put some messages in the chat about systems, citing Eleanor Ostrom, so complex systems and governance. That's more of a comment than a question. Sorry, there's so many things in the chat. I find it cognitively hard to sort of process it all as well as listen. So sorry if I'm not handling the chairing in the way that others might. But Rashid, go ahead, Rachel.
To Chris Fremantle to talk. Oh, hi, I can just see you there. Chris, would you say a tiny bit about a quick headline summary about your approach to evaluation, since we're talking about evaluation?
Yeah, sure. Yes, happily. So this evaluation method was developed by Nutley, Meager, and Lyle, and it comes out of policy impact. And it basically looks for 5 categories of indicators. So aha moments, conceptual shifts, capacity building, instrumental impacts, cultural attitudinal shifts towards collaboration between disciplines, and then enduring connectivity, people working together beyond a project. And we used it, I was a co-I on Design in Action, which was one of the AHRC's knowledge exchange hubs. And we used it on the data that was being generated from surveys of participants in Design in Action. And we presented it at the DMI a few years ago, but I've just used it in another context. I used it as the mechanism for evaluating a Creative Europe project on cultural projects in climate change adaptation. It's a really, if you just think about, you know, there's links between conceptual shifts and capacity building and instrumental impacts. We all know enduring connectivity, people working together over longer periods across disciplines, you know, building long-term connections. There's definitely a methodology in there that could be appropriate in this landscape to go beyond case studies.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I love that idea of tracking aha moments. There's someone else who's put some, Radka, I can't see you. Would it be appropriate, could I invite you, if you're here, to say a tiny bit about the work that you flagged in the chat?
Hi, Liz. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I'm actually sat in the Manchester University room, even though I'm in Lancaster. I'm from Lancaster University. So we've been working mainly with our local government, with Lancaster City Council and Lancashire County Council, in response to the levelling up agenda and in response to the Eden Morecambe project. And we've sort of piloted a really small sort of ethnographic inquiry into active transport. And what I put in there, that we involved quite a lot of local entrepreneurs and local artists as well. And I think what was quite interesting for us in the project was to sort of enable, almost as a university, to facilitate the dialogue between the local entrepreneurs who seemingly had a sort of more access to action in a way, and energize the policymakers in a sort of, achieving some activities that maybe at that time the local authorities were unable maybe to take forward. So that was quite an interesting observation for us. And we have used quite a lot of sort of futuring techniques I draw on from strategic management. So as a management scholar, I'm learning forever from our LICA colleagues, from our design colleagues. So we are a multidisciplinary team between sort of management and design, and we're building on these findings now with the open innovation team from the government, who is supporting us instead of trying to continue with the impact. But it was a very small, we had very small amount of money, but it's just seeing the energy in the room with the policymakers and the entrepreneurs and the local culture community. So that was something quite special that the policymakers commented on. And I just wonder, it's not only the transdisciplinary research, but I wonder whether it's the sort of concept of the open innovation space for the policymakers, where they really appreciate these sort of new ideas. I even bring students, international students, where the local policymakers, especially in our very white middle class county, they really appreciate the international insights from our student community. So those, I'm very, of course, I can talk about this forever, but I'll catch up with you, Liz, by email later on. But thank you so much.
Thank you, that's really great. Thanks for sharing. And I think this is part of the point of the report, that we've got these tiny little isolated, amazing nuggets, and we need the nuggets to get bigger. I can see Andy Knight has got his hand up. Lucy, can we take him? Of course we can.
Yeah. We can, but Rashid has put so many questions and comments in the chat. I feel like we should give Rashid a moment if they'd like to make a response directly, not just in the chat. So can I, before Andy, could Rashid, if you're still here, would you like to just raise one of the comments or chats you said?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Sorry for taking over the chat. I have always so many feelings and observations and things that I'm like obsessing with. So every time I get into a community like this, I'm like probing all of the ideas, seeing how people respond, because this is like the space where I can find people that understand my maybe a little bit not so normal brain. So thanks for asking. Yeah, one of the things that's been really interesting to me is the approach from Elinor Ostrom and her economic work, which she won the Nobel Prize for. One of the things that stood out about her approach was that instead of making sweeping claims and being sort of formalist in nature, it seems like she's been able to find a rigorous approach that is about solving real world problems in context and not diverting to our human tendency to sort of either or neither but, kind of all of the things that are happening, to find threads that come through and then ultimately stand the test of like the heaviest critics, the non-believers. And I just wanted to share that thought. And another thing that's like coming up at the moment is some of the research that I saw happening in the UK around the Preston model and the impact of designing policy in this space, also with the way that they were presenting their policy propositions in a visual like a visual channel to be consumed. I felt like it was really a standout example or a case study of how policy and design can really come together to have impacts on social, environmental, and economic justice at the same time. So it's been something that I return to frequently as I'm working on putting together my doctoral research. So thanks so much for the time. If people have questions or responses, would love to stay in touch. I put my email in the chat. Thanks.
Me and Catherine are smiling because we're also very, very well. I mean, who isn't inspired? Who's not inspired by Eleanor Ostrom? So yeah, really like that. Andy and then Priscilla, isn't it?
Hi everyone. I head up the policy design community for policy design practitioners in government, in civil service. We look after, we have members in about 75 public sector organisations now. And I'd just like to say thank you to Lucy and Liz and the team for convening the network, and to AHRC for funding the network. The relationship between civil services, policy design communities, practitioners, the researchers in the network has been very meaningful to us over the past 18 months, really for two reasons. The first is credibility and the second is practice. And what I mean by that is that design, firstly on credibility, design is a new practice to government in its kind of modern form. We're only, just about 10 years, or getting into our teenage years now, and we are still creating credibility and licensing government. So joining forces between design researchers and design practitioners has been an incredibly powerful way to establish gravity and to validate our work and to demonstrate to others in government that design is a real thing. Secondly, on practice, just being able to connect researchers and practitioners has really raised the waterline in both ways, for both parties. I think it's certainly helped to stretch our practice, and I think crucially it's helped practitioners and researchers to get onto the same page and to get a shared understanding of what is important and to use the same language. Our most recent cross-government governance board meeting for policy design, I asked the board members whether they wanted to continue having a working relationship with design researchers, because we're reaching the end of this 18 months of funding. And they gave an absolutely emphatic yes. This kind of relationship with research has become an essential part of our sort of operating methodology. So I really hope that this report can open the doors to the possibility of us having a kind of long and sustained relationship between design policy in government, the government practice, and design research in universities. So I'd just like to really warmly welcome this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for your ongoing support and collaboration over the previous 18 months. For those of you who are new to this network, which is ending this phase, the 4 events that Liz mentioned, some of the speakers of whom have joined us today, all of the material from that, including video, is on the blog that Andy leads and co-edits, which is the public design blog. So perhaps somebody could put that in the chat. I also just put in the chat the LinkedIn group, which has more than 700 members, UK and international, interested in these topics. And as this 18-month funded network comes to an end with our report, we've agreed with Andy and his team that they will take over convening it, so that what currently appears on LinkedIn as the AHRC Design Policy Network will take a new form, allowing us to continue these conversations, both those of us who are in academia, people who are in practice inside government, and people who are outside government, across various disciplines. So we're delighted with that outcome. Since we're going to end in a few minutes, we're not going to take any more questions. So apologies, Priscilla, for not taking your question, but thank you for this. I know I saw you put some in the chat, and I hope that there'll be opportunities for further discussion, including in the LinkedIn group. So what next? The network concludes this phase. However, myself and the other what we call in academia investigators will be working with Andy and the policy design community across government, and with Jonathan and the local government innovation unit to develop a new funded bid that takes forward some of the work that we've proposed, and to do so in a collaborative way across disciplines, transdisciplinary working in practice. So there will be a further development of the network, which itself, as Liz said, we weren't doing research, we were more having conversations and scoping out a research agenda. But as part of that, we did engage a lot of people that Liz mentioned, and I'd like to just thank some of them. So first of all of the co-authors who worked on the report, all of the speakers at our event, as well as the 10 contributors, many of whom are relatively recent PhD students, who also added some in-person perspectives to the report, and it gave a flavour of the variety of sites that design research is being used in relation to policy. And I also want to thank Louise Ingledow and Gabriele Grigorivite, who helped and supported essentially with the administration, essential for making any of this work at all. I also just want to do a little advert for anybody who'd like to do a generously funded PhD in these topics. My university, UAL, is one of 8 universities in 6 European countries, recently awarded millions of euros to do doctoral studies specifically related to sustainable transitions. That will be launching in January with applications due by the end of February, and there is a LinkedIn group for that. So if anybody would like to basically move country, you have to move to one of the countries, you can't just do it where you are. There is funded opportunities around many of these topics, around policy design, democratic design in relation to sustainable transitions, so a little advert there, please forgive me, but we want to have the most amazing PhD students and give this amazing opportunity as widely as possible. So thank you to all of our speakers today. Thank you to all of you for taking time out of your afternoons, and apologies if we couldn't have everybody share perspectives in the time we had available, but we hope you will join the LinkedIn group and we can continue these conversations in other fora. Thank you. That's the end. Thank you very much. This video will remain on our UAL website, so if you'd like to refer to it and the report, it'll still be there. So have a good afternoon or good morning or good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.